Love the enthusiasm. Can I have enthusiastic questions? Sunita.
That's it.
Awesome talk, Rio, as usual. So question is more, it's more like a policy question, meaning you folks have done what you have done in Japan, taking all of these different AI models, not relying entirely on subscription-based models, etc. Did you folks have the need, or did you folks brainstorm these options with the government, for example, or was it even a point of discussion, or you folks just went ahead and did what you did?
So yeah, I think this slide is the best one to explain this. So we chose our data set according to a very restrictive criteria, actually, because we have the intention to open our data set. That severely restricts what kind of data we can use for training. And of course, the government, so this National Diet Library is the biggest library in Japan. It's supposed to store every single book that was published in Japan. But of course, there's only a certain percentage of that that's digitized. So it's not the whole thing, but yeah, in terms of policy and what the government wants, it wants many different things, right? It first wants to, this Hiroshima AI process. Have people heard of this? This was something that Prime Minister Kishida did during his term. Had a meeting in Hiroshima right when ChatGPT went viral. All the heads of state gathered, and Japan was trying to lead this kind of policy effort. But Japan is known to be very permissive in terms of copyright, right? I think many people that are doing AI have heard that, oh yeah, if you want to do AI, you should house your training in Japan, where the Japanese rules apply and there's copyright is not an issue, right? So I'm not saying Japan infringes on all the copyrights. What I'm saying is there's this particular clause in the Japanese copyright laws where it says for training, right? Training is considered not as form of reproduction or like actual use of that data. It's actually interpreted in a more mechanical sense, that it's something is being done on a computer, but how you use it, it's not actually being used for anything while it's still in training. So that's their interpretation, and that allows you to at least train on copyrighted material. Whether someone can sue or not is a completely different issue, right? This is just Japanese law states that. And so you have that on the one hand, but then you have all these anime creators that are huge on copyright. They don't want their work to be copied or stolen by AI. So there's this huge effort in Japan now by artists of many sorts to really look into this AI use of their work. And so we have very strict people, and we have very sort of permissive people on the other hand, and there's huge conflict now between them, and we're somewhere trying to navigate in that space and try to still make everything that we do open. So hope it helps everyone. Yeah.
Sorry. Kevin, could you please ask in Japanese? Disclosure, Kevin spent 5 years in Japan, Dallas more, you a little bit more. So, multicore for you.
それは難しいです。
He said it was difficult.
So just if I remember correctly, the National Diet Library, that's like the official library of the government, like equivalent to the Library of Congress, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Question regarding, I don't know if you'd call this chaining models. So if we don't want to use the general purpose models or the models developed by OpenAI and want to make more personalized models because there are certain limitations in those models, would it make sense, like on the topic of tokenization, and AI is not my field, so bear with me while I blunder through this question. On the topic of tokenization, would it make sense to, instead of developing a full model to do all the training or whatever else, and the inferencing, there is a smaller or lighter model that could get around this issue and then feed questions or prompts to this other more accurate model?
So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this tokenization issue, because I forgot to mention one very important thing. So this matters much less now. The reason is the sort of English-based models now have a significant portion of Japanese, Chinese, and Korean tokens in them, in their vocabulary. And so this 3x number is more like 1.2 or 1.3x now, right? It's much better now. In the latest models, all the latest models are pretty multilingual. This aspect was much easier than math and coding, so they sort of solved this problem in the meantime while they were trying to achieve these math and coding scores. So multilinguality was an easier issue to tackle, and now it's pretty much solved, I think. Yeah. So this is not our primary motivation now. My motivation is to somehow try to catch up to this thing, right? We really need this for AI for science. Yeah.
So I guess a quick follow-up. So maybe not related to AI for science, but let's say Kevin G in another country developed a model, and that model had certain biases because it was trained on specific data in it that they have, but not the data I need to train on. So instead of me taking their model and retraining to build a bigger model, could I develop something smaller that kind of like an interface to remove the bias from their model, or at least to understand what the bias is and then get around it in the prompts I'm asking? I'm not sure if that makes sense. Right.
So the more capable the models are, the more tricky this debiasing or the alignment issue becomes, right? Because they can think pretty much independently to some extent now. If you've used these O3 with DeepSeek, it sort of goes on and reasons in its own sort of way, and it's very difficult to control that, right? Even DeepSeek, which is supposed to be aligned to like Chinese standards and norms, sort of you can let it tell you a lot about what it shouldn't be telling you if you know how to make it reason in a certain way. You can go around all the safeguards. So these reasoning models are very difficult to control in that sense, and So there's a lot of issues, both in terms of how to improve the capability, but also how to keep these things safe, that are very unsolved at the moment, right? Very much unsolved. I think these closed companies are making, especially Anthropic is making huge efforts to keep these things aligned and safe. Maybe less so for some of the open models, but these leading companies spend a lot of effort in making these things unbiased and safe. So I think this is something that we will need to keep doing. As new technique comes out, we need to completely redo the thing again. But this is something both things need to advance at the same sort of pace. Otherwise, if one gets outpaced, especially if the capability increases so much and the safeguards not as much, then these things, as Jeff Hinton was afraid, it might go out of control. It might be these power-seeking AI that wants to achieve its goal.
Cool, thanks.
Oh, Raphael is desperate in the back.
Thank you, Rio. Nice, amazing talk here in the back.
Oh yes, I see you. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I know the light is hard to see. I found it fantastic to know. I love the passion when you put like AI for AI, like one of your last slides there, and then you have the science putting out. So how do you see these AI for AI interactions happening within a model or model feeding models, and where you see the human side feeding new information there?
Yeah, so that's the thing I'm still not sure about. So do you really need to pre-train on that data is, sort of a starting point of the discussion, right? Because everyone's trying to pre-train or at least fine-tune on all the scientific data right now. I'm not sure that that's the best approach. So in some cases, for example, like genome sequences, I'm pretty sure you should pre-train on them because they're very similar to language. Climate data, not so sure. It may depend on the science domain, and also, it depends on what you want to do in the end. What is the outcome that you want by training on that science data? If you just want a science paper, then it's best to feed in papers, into the LLM, just text and pictures. There's this model in a Japanese startup developed this thing called the AI scientist that does, experimental planning and then the coding and then writing the paper, doing the experiments and then code and then reviews its own paper that it wrote. And it goes through this cycle like a few times, and it got a paper that looked pretty much like any other AI paper that's submitted to the top conferences nowadays. So, this kind of outcome is achievable through that process. It really depends on what exact outcome you want by feeding it in that scientific data. It's probably not just scientific papers. Yeah.
Is anyone in the reviewing panel of SC25 workshops?
Review.
Okay.
A PC member? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I submitted a workshop, and a few things were.
Yeah.
A few things were human. Join me saying thank you to Rio for the fantastic presentation.
Thank you very much again.